The baby is living in you, and you nurture the baby and you care for the baby, and it's like you have the baby and somebody just takes the baby away from you. And like I said, my children were older, but it really felt like they ripped them right out of my womb.
They took my children in 1997, November. I remember the date so well because it was the day after my birthday. We had been out celebrating that evening late, my birthday. They took them the very next day from their schools. You know, I could understand if they were wandering in the street, if they were malnourished, if they were harmed by me in any way. Not a bruise did I ever put on them. My children never had a complaint about me. They loved me. Always have. They cried. My daughter wrote me a note the day they took her into foster care. I saved it to this day where she says, you know, that she cried and she cried and she cried.
And they came into my house like Gestapo, slave time. Dragged my kids out like I was a criminal, man. Took my kids out, my kids were screaming, telling me, oh no, not again.
Someone comes and makes a call, a complaint against you. A caseworker will come out from ACS to check, and they just take your children. You might say, well, little Johnny fell. He has a mark on his arm, but he fell. I took him to the doctor. You can check with the people. There were 10 people in the park who saw the incident. I did not do anything to little Johnny to hurt him. He was just playing and he fell. No one will call the 10 people. No one will check with the doctor. But they'll take little Johnny.
Yeah, I called the health department on them because they wouldn't unstop my bathtub. And since I called the health department to try to push them to carry out the responsibilities they already had, they retaliated. They picked up the phone and made whatever story up that they did. The city did not investigate. They just went to their schools and took them all into custody.
Somebody could call up on the phone and tell ACS to go to your house, you ain't doing, and you could be a perfect parent. They knock on your door, and if they come in there and you don't know your rights or something going on, your kids is gone. Your kids is disappeared like a disappearing act. They was snatching kids like a dentist do teeth.
And these people who are coming in, taking your children, they hate themselves too. There's such a fast turnover in ACS. People don't want to do that. It's very heart-rending. You're coming in and you're trying to take someone's child and the child's trying to fight you. You're cornering the child like, you know, some sort of a predator animal type of thing, so you can get him and snatch him away, or get her and snatch him away and drag her off kicking and screaming.
If somebody called and said they heard the child screaming, crying, or what have you, they'll come in there and take that child that they claim that was screaming and crying. And if there's any more children in the household, they'll take that one too. Not only that, if a mother is pregnant with a baby, when she go to the hospital to have that child, they be right there to take the baby. You understand what I'm saying? That's the truth. And they're saying they're doing things in the best interest of the child. No, they're not. No, they're not.
The majority of people who have issues with foster care are going to be people who have issues with housing. Not adequate space for their children, inadequate amounts of conditions that people can live in. Now, when you look at those types of situations, you're looking at poverty.
Many, many times children are taken simply because the family's poverty has been confused with child neglect.
Repeatedly, I saw petitions filed in court before me that alleged that there were massive holes in the floor, that the ceiling was falling in, that there weren't window guards on the windows. All of these are things that the landlord is responsible for maintaining. And they'll come around and they'll take the kids away. Rather than relocating the family to adequate housing or paying for repairs or otherwise coercing the landlord to repair an apartment. I saw children removed from the home, parents left there, children removed, and then when I questioned this action in court, they say, well, you know, nothing we can really do about it. Sorry. You know, these kids will have to be in foster care.
Often the functions are to be punitive, to punish families who are not able to adequately care for their kids living on a welfare grant that's less than the poverty level. And if you can't do that, it's your fault. And so we'll punish you and take your kids away rather than try to help you.
What the families needed most was help with supervision, daycare, and babysitting, but the quote service that kept being offered the most was foster care.
There are countless examples of a mother who has a child who's sick. She has to shop. She's a single parent. She leaves the child at home because she can't afford childcare or a babysitter. Something happens at the house. She comes back and the child has to be removed.
It may well be that that parent exercised poor judgment, but it was poor judgment born out of a situation eminently correctable by money.
It would be much less expensive and better for the family if the city were to provide child care for that woman or respite care. But they don't generally do that.
Instead, we end up providing 5 lawyers in the case, 18 court appearances, the removal of children from their parents. We hire agency caseworkers, agency executive directors, foster parents. Most of the money spent on public child welfare is spent on professionals who themselves can't do the simple service of provide babysitting. So some cases could be solved by the expenditure of $20 a week, and they end up costing the state $15,000 a year.
I called HHS and I said, hey, my children were taken for no reason. And they were like, oh, well, there are certain procedures, they're supposed to do certain, that's all they focused on. That the city did it the right way, took care of all the paperwork, that they had their judge, that they, hooked up with this job, stamp, validate what they did, and say it's okay.
My son had been acting up in class and cursing out the teacher and things like that. So I spanked his behind, and from that's how the ACS case came about. But the case just dragged and dragged and dragged, and that's the problem with the system. They just keep adjourning the date and adjourning the date and adjourning the date.
And they got me going back and forth to court, back and forth, for nothing. It's a waste of my time. I don't have time like that. And then they'll give you, reappoint you, cause somebody's sick. Last time the judge got sick. Well, baby, she was sick. I'm not gonna say she wasn't sick, but this should have been over long time ago.
No judge is able to handle 30 cases a day of this nature. Now, there are cases that might take 15 or 20 minutes because things are going the way they should, and it doesn't require more than a sign-off by a judge. There are cases that might take hours because things aren't going the way they are, and you have to spend time analyzing what's happened, analyzing what the children need, hearing from their pediatricians or their social workers and whoever else is involved in their life, and making an informed decision as to what the final order should be in the case. Impossible to do if you have 30 cases on the calendar. You can handle 5, 6, 7.
And I don't continue, I don't feel like I should continue going around in circles to this court, back and forth for what? It's nothing happened on my behalf.
You're in like a no-win situation as a parent who are going through this kind of a struggle, because you're trying to solve your issues, but you have no one that's working with you, no one that's giving you any kind of options. You might go to court and the judge might say, well, you can get your children back if you find adequate housing, but you're on the bottom of the housing list. How are you going to find adequate housing within the time restraints set by the government, that is from 15 to 22 months to get your children back before they can begin to terminate your parental rights?
The problem is, in New York City at any rate, is the 18 months that you're in foster care before they start adoption proceedings can be eaten up by the trial. In many cases, we see children removed, a family court case, a petition for neglect or abuse is filed against the parent. The parent is then entitled to a trial on that issue. It can take up to a year before the trial even takes place.
Sometimes you show up and they say a few words and something happens, and then they tell you to come back in 2 months. You come back in 2 months, They don't have the papers ready that the judge ordered the last time you were in. They give you 2 more months to come back. That's eating up your 15 months.
I've been going to family court now for 6 years. They're hoping you get tired, that you want to go on with your life, that you'll want to do something different and just stop going. But in my case, some parents are persistent and continue to go. So I guess they decided they are going to terminate my rights. And the way they've written the laws, or should I say stack the deck, they can do that. They can terminate my rights to my child and give her to someone else.
Now, if there is really no plan for this child to return to their parents, and they've been in care 15 of the last 22 months, then those parents of those children must have their rights terminated and the children freed for adoption.
I'm shocked. I never thought something like this would happen. I thought judges would be fair and impartial. No such thing in the family court. I found you should not expect it because you won't find it.
It's always mandatory for parents to go to parenting skill classes, counseling, therapy, all sorts of things that they already say the parents need. Like, you need parenting skills class because your parenting skills they're not right because of what you did. Then you need therapy because you did what you did. It took me a while to get around to the therapy part because I didn't think that I had a problem. I really didn't, and I still don't. And even when I went to the therapy, I didn't think I had a problem.
We might see a mother whose problem is she's working 2 jobs to stay off welfare. She's a single parent. She's sleeping with the lights on to keep the rats from coming out and biting her kids at night. And so maybe she feels the world is not an altogether friendly place and she gets depressed. So the child welfare comes in and says to that mother, "Oh, you have apathy futility syndrome." And that's a real term, I'm not making it up. "You need counseling and parent education." So now this mother, with all her other problems, has to drag herself down to some counselor's office once a week and go to a parent education class. What she really needed was some concrete help to get a better place to live, a better job, and some daycare.
Caseworker A tells the parents, well, if you take parenting skills and counseling, then you'll have your children back. They do it. They've finished. They've got their certificate. Well, now caseworker A has left the agency, and now caseworker B is assigned to the case. Caseworker B looks at the file and says, oh, it's nice that you did the counseling and the parenting skills, but now I think that I want you to do some anger management too. And so then they have to go do that. And every time they think they're done, they're given a new challenge. They're given a new task to do. Imagine trying to complete all these services while holding down a job, while going to school, while trying to live your life. I have a client who's lost 2 jobs because of one investigation and prosecution, and her kids weren't even in foster care.
We were one of the 6 agencies in the city of New York that took part in this pilot project, and the idea was to intensify the services to families early on and try to hook them into services and work with them more intensely, advocate for them, because then it's a better chance for the children to go home and be reunited, with their parents.
There is a mission statement that's put out by the Child Protective Service in the city of New York, which says that all ambiguities will be resolved in favor of the safety of the child, which translated in their own training is, when in doubt, take them out. Once a child has been removed from a home, ACS, the private agencies, and the family court judges are reluctant to alter the status quo, to return that child, because God forbid the child goes home to the parent and the child ends up injured. Well, nobody wants to see their picture on the front page of the Daily News.
They have given me 3 court dates in 1 month. I figured they was trying to tie it all up, to just get rid of it. No, they continue the same thing over and over and again. They even ask the same question that they done asked me I don't know how many times. They talk against you like they seen you do something, that they know something about you bad, don't know anything, don't know you at all, but they can lie about you. And the judge say, I believe what the caseworker said. I find the caseworker to be truthful, and I don't find you to be truthful in what you're saying. Now, isn't that something to tell a grandmother, she's fighting for her child? And you gonna believe a caseworker? Come on, that's a bunch of crap. And I'm telling it like it is.
We have children who have been returned home to their families. If the doorbell rings, the kids will hide in the closet because that's how traumatic that experience was, that experience of removal.
Like my daughter still has nightmares about it. She still comes to me like, Mommy, remember when they came and took me away? And I have to like reassure her like they're not coming back, like they'll never come back. But it's hard because she's still stuck in that time frame. And like I said, it happened when she was 3, so the bond that was already there from birth until 3 years old was like real strong. Children, a child will never think that somebody could take them away from their parent, and that's what ACS failed to realize. You know, like a parent will know that ACS could become involved in things like that. We know the consequences of that, but children, they don't know and they don't understand. So that's really like the hardest part about it.
Sometime through the night, he be crying. I said, what's the matter, Ty? He says, I want my sister. And I try to be strong and don't show no tears because I done shed enough tears to swim, because what they doing is wrong. It's not right. They don't even try to put families back together. What they're all about is breaking up families. That's what they're about. But see, like I said before, I didn't know it. I didn't know it.
You never wipe it out. And the kid never forgets that they had a mother, they had a father. Even in that one visit for that 1 hour every 2 weeks, they waiting to see that mother, waiting to see that father come again.
I was crazy. You do go crazy. You do. You actually, in your mind, your state of mind is not the same. It never is never the same. It'll never be the same. Your state of mind will never be the same. But as you're going through it, you do go crazy. Some parents have suicidal thoughts, and some parents give up and they just leave their children in the system because that's how hard it is. You just don't know what to do. You do go crazy. I went crazy. I did. I went crazy in the sense that, how could this happen to me? Like, just how could this happen to me?
I was shocked. I thought there was a mistake. I thought, oh, as soon as they realize that these are honor roll students, they'll give them back. But when I proceeded, through, it's endless, the delays, going to court. But when I finally did get my hearing, what you call the 1028 hearing, where ACS admitted they were honor roll students, where ACS admitted they were well fed, that they were well dressed, that's when I knew something was wrong. And I didn't get to see them for a very long time. They were being beaten. They were being abused in foster care. And I've been fighting. I spent thousands of dollars, and yet they will not return my children. It's something. It's like a nightmare. I would never have believed such a thing exists.
Because ACS will knock you down for the count, make you give up. The pressure they put you through, you give up, you'll walk away. It was times I wanted to walk away. I just wanted to walk away and leave my kids. They put you through so many changes that you just want to walk away because you don't have your faculties are not there. Your heart, it was ripped out emotionally, physically. You was torn to pieces.
If the parent did not have that love, they wouldn't go all these places they have to go. We have people who are coming here from New York City who are going up to Albany to see a child for an hour. People go out to Long Island to see a child for an hour. You're spending 6 hours riding and 1 hour in a supervised visit.
My kids was in all the boroughs, separated from each other. And I had to stand there and just look at that. I'm surprised I still have my mind, my faculty. That's the hurtingest thing in the world. And visits, visit your kid 2 hours. You've been with them all your life, and you only can see them for 2 hours. And then you just leave and they take them.
The only thing that kept me calm was my kids. That was the only thing that kept me calm, because throughout every meeting that I had and every person I had to speak to, only thing that was in my mind was like, you have to do this so the kids could come home. You have to be calm so the kids could come home. Because if you say the wrong thing, the kids are not coming home. So that was the only thing that really kept me calm, was my kids. Because if I thought about the system and what they were doing to me, that just made me rage with more anger. So I found a focus point, which was my kids, and I just focused on my children, just getting them home, and that's the main thing that really kept me going every day.
It's interesting how you have children who are in your homes who are walking around and looking normal, and a week or two after they go into foster care, they have some sort of problem that requires them to be placed on some sort of medication.
Like if a child acts out in the system as a part of being in the system, they'll label your child. They'll say your child needs medication. I refused, and I just came at them like there's nothing wrong with him. My son has been going to school since he was 3 years old. He's very smart. He just get easily distracted. They didn't associate his removal with him acting out. They associated with what I had done to him.
The child sees you and wants to be with you and may start to cry when it's time for you to leave. Mommy, take me with you. Mommy, don't leave me here. Why do I have to stay? I want to go with you. If this type of behavior continues, the agency might go into court and say, well, look, we need to stop this mother's visiting because she is disturbing this child. If the behavior continues, they might say, well, this child now needs to go to one of these psychiatric evaluation stations, or Bunk Psychiatric, or some place where they have children, so that we can see why this child is acting in this way. No one ever looks at the fact that the child has only seen its parent for 2 hours or 1 hour that whole week. No one says, let's extend the visits. Let's see how we can work out whatever issues this family has so that the child can come home. Nobody says that.
I get 1 hour with her per week if the agency complies with that order, which most of the time they don't. 1 hour per week, and they stand there and they watch and listen to everything I say to my daughter. I'm not allowed to take her to a park, to a movie, to do any of the things with her that parents do. It's hard.
Supervised visit.
I love her so. I love my daughter so much. I was giving her the best education, the best of everything. And now I can't even walk in the park with her. Can't buy her a soda. Can't buy her anything. Can't take her anywhere. If I buy things, I got to bring them with me and give them to her while being supervised. You know, that's like visiting someone in prison. And you can only talk to them through the glass. You can't embrace them. It's hard.
Every 3 months or so, we have a parenting skills graduation. These are our birth parents that have completed parenting skills and on the road to getting their children back. And when they share their emotional stories, you know, about how supported they felt by the agency, how grateful they are to the foster parents, you know, it always brings a tear to the eye, you know, that they feel so grateful and they feel so good about getting this opportunity.
What was interesting to me, and I didn't expect this at all, when I started placing kids into foster care, I found that a tremendous number of the foster parents were also motivated primarily by the subsidies. You know, there were some homes you would place them in, and the foster parents would be really upfront, saying, you know, in this for the money. You know, I provide a good home for these kids, but you know, I'm in it to get the subsidy money. I actually had one incident where the child had been adopted, and she was an African American child adopted into an Indian family. And when we went, and they'd come to an argument, and the father had slapped the girl across the face very hard. I mean, left a bruise. She went to the police, and you know, we got called out. So I went and interviewed the mother, and she looked me right in the eye and said, "This child's not worth the money anymore. Just take her back."
You would want to think that they wouldn't do it for money, really. But if you had an extra $1,000 coming into your household, you didn't have to pay taxes on, would you be so eager to give that child back?
Well, the foster parent in New York gets around $550 for a month for an average child. If the child's diagnosed with hyperactivity disorder, that gets bumped up to like $750, and the top payments are around $1,500 a month for a severely disabled child.
If people want to adopt, you shouldn't have to pay them. They should be getting the same that the parents get when they get their children back, nothing. And if they want to adopt, they should be adopting because this is what they really want to do out of love.
These private agencies are reimbursed on a per diem basis. For every child in care, they get a fixed amount of money. If the child is discharged, that funding stops. And if you have budgets to manage and bottom lines to look at, there's a financial incentive for children to stay in the foster care system. One of the things we published was the list of the executive director's salaries. Some of them are extraordinarily high. Some of them are in the $250,000 a year range.
The biggest addiction problem in child welfare is well-heeled, old-line, mainstream private child welfare agencies who are addicted to their per diem payments. And they are putting their addiction ahead of the children.
We currently have approximately 930 children placed in care with us in our regular foster boarding home program. We have an additional 15 children that are placed in our therapeutic foster boarding home program. Therapeutic is for children who have exceptional needs, and so they might have to be normally in a group home or a residential setting. However, again, with more intensive services, they can be maintained in foster homes. So we call those therapeutic foster homes.
Put the child in a group home, you're into $20,000 or $30,000. Put them in an orphanage, an institution, you're in the $50,000 range. Put that child in a so-called residential treatment center, and you're talking $85,000 or more per child per year.
We have wraparound services, which means that we have the medical clinic, and we have psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists available right in the same organization. Within our program, the parents can get those type of services as well as the children. We also have a family services department, which is designated just to work with the parents in addition to the regular caseworker, social worker, and supervisors.
One normal child, well, healthy, is worth $40,000 per year, at least. If they can diagnose the child with some sort of ailment, then the child becomes worth more.
Like if a child acts out in the system as a part of being in the system, they'll label your child. They'll say your child needs medication. I refused.
The majority of the children who are placed in foster care, unfortunately, are soon diagnosed with some sort of disturbing ailment, where many of them will have to be placed on psychotropic drugs. Once you get diagnosed with some sort of ailment, the rate of maintenance for you that the agencies receive goes up from the base rate of the so-called $40,000. So now, depending on how sick you are, they get paid.
We're spending $12 billion, and in the process, we're probably taking a lot of children out of homes where they would have done all right, and we're putting them into a foster care system that attaches a subsidy to them that dehumanizes them and can destroy their lives.
The foster agency, if the child is adopted, the foster care agency will get more money because there are adoption subsidies involved. If the child goes home to the parents, the agency gets nothing. Now this is a wonderful situation. The agency no longer has to supervise the foster home, so they cut down on manpower. They no longer have to provide services because the child is now legally adopted, but they still get money.
I often refer to the foster care industrial complex, the large network of private child welfare agencies that feeds off of this system, thrives on it, and is in fact paid to hold children in foster care.
They get a whole lot of money. They get a lot of money, man. Foster parents get paid good. The agencies are getting money. They snatch a kid as a business. It's like a dog catcher.
The system is more secret than the CIA. Very few people ever get to see how the child welfare system really works.
The public doesn't want to know, The public doesn't want to know that there are so many children in this country who are suffering so badly.
Because these children are underage, that they say that you're not allowed to read their files or even talk to them because they're minors. But what really is being used with those child privacy laws is they're covering up an abusive system. They're not allowing these children to come forward and speak and tell what's happening to them because, or to show proof by opening their records to them.
So a parent can come forward and say, look what they did to me. And then the reporter will go to the child welfare agency and the agency will say, oh, there's really so much more to it than that. And oh, we wish we could tell you, but gosh darn it, we can't. Those confidentiality rules,
ACS is relied on to police themselves. Their contract agency is relied on to police themselves. And they never admit they've done wrong. And everyone relies on this city policing themselves and their contract agencies. I sincerely believe they all know they're lying. They all know it. Because if they dug even a little bit past the surface, past the superficial inquiry, they'd find out that ACS has been lying. These are the same things ACS has been doing when they were known as BCW. They haven't changed.
Every 6 months, the private agency sends a form to ACS. It's called a Uniform Case Record, in which the agency informs ACS how they are handling these children and how the children are doing. Nobody reads these forms. I mean, what OCASM does is they check off, yes, we received the form. The agency can write on the form, everything is wonderful, little Johnny is a straight A student, he's applying to Harvard, and nobody checks up on it.
Nobody wants to leave the house and have a child killed or injured and have to face questions from the press, from their managers, from the higher-ups at ACS, from the Child Fatality Review Board. Nobody ever wants that to happen. And as a caseworker, if you leave a child in the home, you're taking the responsibility of saying, I've assessed the home and it's safe. If you place a child in foster care, which is also a very, very dangerous place to be, there's no responsibility on the caseworker. If the child's later killed in foster care, that's someone else's fault.
Many take credit for removing those children from their parents and saying to the electorate, I've done well for our community. I've saved, with quotes around the word, 10,000 children this year. But few get to ask the question, have you saved them or have you harmed them?
It's the foxes, guarding the hen house. And the hens are disappearing and being harmed and being raped. And all everyone says is, the chickens did it to himself. The hens did it to themselves. Surely the foxes wouldn't hurt them. No.
About 12 states have now opened their juvenile courts in child abuse and neglect proceedings so people can see what's going on. That's happened over the past 20 years. Not one of those states has closed them again. And that tells you something.
And we have this tremendous turnover. And what's our turnover rate? About a third of the workers in a year. It's gone down a bit, but it's gone up as much as a third of the workers a year. Well, they're burning out because they just feel this sense of futility. Well, we have to find some way of turning that around by making incentives toward success instead of incentives that limit the possibilities of kids returning home.
State of Illinois. Back in 1997, they probably had one of the worst systems in the country. They had 50,000 children in foster care on any given day just in Illinois, proportionately more than any other state. They finally figured out, you get what you pay for. They have changed the contracts with their private agencies to reward keeping children safely at home or returning them there, and to reward adoption where necessary. And lo and behold, when they changed the financial incentives, the intractable became tractable, the dysfunctional became functional. Today there are fewer than 20,000 children in foster care in Illinois. And independent monitors have found that as the foster care population has gone down, child safety has improved.
Daycare. I mean, we have this program. Daycare. We're gonna provide, get people off welfare. We're supposed to provide them daycare. We don't have any daycare. We don't have any daycare. We tell them, go find your own place to leave the kids. And then if they were to leave their 6-year-old kid alone because they couldn't get home from work, what would we say? We'd say they're neglecting their kid.
When you hear the directors of these residential treatment centers talk, they always say, oh, we wish we could put ourselves out of business. But these children are so disturbed and have so many problems. They blow out of foster homes. No one will take them. Only we can handle them, and only in this way. Well, what I say is if I can find one place that can deal with the same children another way, that proves they're wrong. I can name at least 3. There are several places around the country where institutions have had crises of conscience, where they've broken from this mold and said, we're not helping these kids. This isn't working. And they have themselves shut down their beds, replaced much of the institutional care with helping families in their own homes or in foster homes. They serve more children, they get better results, and it costs less.
The change that's needed is to shift from a blame-oriented idea to a helping-oriented program. But we are very far from accomplishing that.
If you took only even a small proportion of the money that is thrown away on substitute care and spent it on safe, proven programs to keep families together, you could dramatically reduce your foster care population, and you would also save taxpayers money.
We are the victims. But like I said before, I done cried a river. So I don't tend to cry no more. I intend for something to be done. ACS need to be redone because it's just not right.
If it was traded on the stock exchange, nobody would invest in this system. I mean, it's producing nothing of benefit.
The bottom line is I want to see my granddaughter. And I don't want nobody to tell me that, oh, she'll find you when she get about 18 years old. No, I want her to know me now.